How is a specific sex act going to assure the birth of only a baby girl and not a baby boy? Does science guarantee that? What are the chances of that specificity succeeding? What will determine it that it is going to be this and only this and nothing else? Is it anybody's? Is it in anybody's control to have this or that? Particularly from the genetic point of view, which will tell that it is just a matter of which type of sperm happens to reach the egg first. That would mean chance. Whether it is this sperm reaching this egg or that sperm reaching the egg, it is a matter of chance. That would mean tossing a coin with head or tail appearing 50-50. In 100 tosses, 50 tails and 50 heads. This is going to be the governance of the type of an offspring by chance. Is that going to decide? Is the toss going to decide the birth of a baby girl or a baby boy? By the flip of a coin, is it going to be decided by the flip of a coin? This is upsetting. This is terribly upsetting when it has to be baby girl alone. According to the book, it has to be the baby girl alone. Is the birth of a baby girl therefore going to be governed by chance? Yes, says genetics. Are we the outcome of a throw of a dice? Yes, says genetics. That doesn't appear to be very palatable, very savory, doesn't sound pleasing. It is a kind of a challenge to our own sense of individuality, of our own personality, of our own independence. It is a challenge. The answer, according to science, is yes, the conception of a baby girl or baby boy is a matter of chance. But will Savitri's birth be determined by chance? This is, of course, the necessity of her birth. But is chance going to govern it? That will rob the entire meaning of existence and the spirit's urge to the splendidly many ocean. It will rather be a cruel joke. Savitri's birth being determined by chance. That will be a cruel joke. That will be a cruel joke. It is not going to be the result of the boon given to Ashwapati by the omniscient goddess, but it is going to be determined by chance. That will be a cruel joke itself. In that case, Ashwapati need not do any yoga tapasya at all. If it is going to be with chance, need not approach the divine goddess and receive any boon at all. If it is going to be governed by chance, then what is the point in approaching the Divine Mother and getting a boon from her? In the theory of chance, world's desire has absolutely no place in the operation of things. Savitri's coming will not then be a willed response. That is according to the genetics, according to theories of science. That will make the entire rendezvous between Ashwapati and the divine goddess a mighty fact, a pronounced stunning fiction. It will belong to the category of imaginative creation. That will imply the poet indulging in pure fancy, and it is going to be a fancy. It need not be respected, but the insistent reality that is there behind it refuses to accept it that it is a fancy. No, it is a will action and it has to take place in the will of the Supreme. If you want a baby girl, have sex, or euphemistically speaking, make love on a full moon night, That is the common belief passed on from generation to generation by old women. Genetics says the sperm with X chromosome or female chromosome has a longer lifespan than the male sperm but exhibits decreased motility. Therefore, intercourse that takes place earlier may provide increased probability of a baby girl. There has to be the right pH balance to ensure that the X chromosome sperm can reach the egg successfully. It is advisable to go for foods that are high in calcium and magnesium. All this looks pretty wise but not convincing at all. It is packed with so many uncertainties that this knowledge starts losing its acceptable absolute validity, its legitimacy. It is not dependable. In the case of incarnation, it is certainly not the flip of a coin. It is not determined by chance. There are other factors, other deeper verities, other weighty experiences and certainties that exist. Mother explains, if the incarnation takes place at the conception, if the incarnation takes place at the conception, the whole formation of the child to be born is directed and governed by a consciousness which is going to incarnate. By the consciousness which is going to incarnate. The choice of the element, the attraction of the substance, a choice of the forces, and even the substance of matter which is assimilated. There is already a selection, and this naturally creates altogether special conditions. It creates special conditions for the formation of the body, which may already be fairly developed, which may be already evolved, already harmonized before its birth. I must say that this is quite exceptional, but still it does happen. If the incarnation takes place at the conception, yes, this does happen, this can happen. More frequently, there are cases in which just the moment of his birth, that is to say, or the first gesture of independence, when the child begins to develop its lungs by crying as much as it can, at that moment, very often, this sort of call from life makes the descent easier and more effective. Sometimes days and at times months pass and the preparation is slow and the entry takes place very gradually in quite a subtle and almost imperceptible way. Sometimes it comes much later when the child itself becomes a little conscious and feels a very subtle but very real relation with something from above, far above, which is like an influence pressing upon it, and then it can begin to feel the need of being in contact with this something which it does not know, does not understand, but which it can only feel. And this aspiration draws the psychic and makes it descend into the child. The entire crux of the matter is in the whole formation of the child to be born, in the whole formation of the child to be born is directed and governed by the consciousness which is going to incarnate. By the consciousness which is going to incarnate. It is that consciousness which is going to govern the entire process. So everything is already fixed in the bone itself. The bone originating from a certain consciousness. The bone which is power, a force shaping and molding time and circumstance and event and processes. It is not matter to the process of chance, but the spirit through the process of matter, spirit through the process of matter, that is going to determine everything. the consciousness that takes care of all contingencies. In the case of developed beings, it is the psychic which chooses everything, the time, the place, the parent, favorite circumstances, everything before it plunges into birth. It actually carries its own sex. It carries its own sex of a baby girl or a baby boy. Everything is determined. In the case of developed beings, everything is determined. Save Hindu writes, we see that the mystery of the divine incarnation in man, the assumption by the Godhead of the human type and the human nature is in the view of the Gita only the other side of the eternal mystery of human birth, that is self, which is always in its essence, though not in its phenomenal appearance. Even such as miraculous assumption in the ordinary human birth, the nature aspect of the universal divine assuming humanity prevails. In the incarnation, the God aspect of the same phenomenon takes its place. In the one, he allowed human nature to take possession of his partial being to dominate it. In the other, he takes possession of his partial type of being and his nature and divinely dominates it, not by evolution or ascent like an ordinary man, not by growing into the divine birth, but by a direct descent into the stuff of humanity and a taking up of its mold, not by growing, but by taking directly the humanity it molds. A physical and mental body is prepared, a physical and mental body is prepared, fit for the divine incarnation by a pure of great heredity, and the descending Godhead takes possession of it. A physical and mental body is prepared, fit for the divine incarnation by a pure of great heredity, and the descending Godhead takes possession of it. It is a direct descent into the stuff of humanity and taking up of the mold. The boon has already fixed it. The boon Ashwapati has received has already fixed in it the birth of a baby girl. They should also take care of the specificity of the divine goddess taking the birth as Ashwapati's daughter. Yogi Ashwapati is only and nobody else is. She will come as Ashwapati's daughter. One shall descend, that is boon. One, she herself, descend as the child of Ashwapati. True, she must pass the portals of the birth, that is the death. That is now perfectly clear, perfectly understandable, but she has also to choose circumstances. She has to choose time, she has to choose place, she has to choose her parent. She has already done that. In her case, in the case of the divine goddess, in the case of the omniscient goddess, who else could be a better father than Ashwapati? Who else? She has made the choice. She comes as his daughter. She comes as Savitri. One shall descend. She shall come as Savitri. She will come as Savitri. She comes as Savitri. In it is met the logic of the infinite. We have yet another dilemma. Yes, there is the specificity of the birth of a baby girl being born, and that specificity has been fixed in the bone itself, and it shall be so. Yet there is a dilemma, another dilemma of two different levels. The first is the psycho-spiritual dilemma, in which a yogi must get ready to engage himself in a tabooed sex act. That which is forbidden in every discipline, in every spiritual practice, forbidden not just as an ethical rule, but because there is something valid in tabooing it, even as it goes against the occult inner spiritual functioning. It delaying and denying all, it upsetting the chemistry of the inner and higher working. We draw ourselves closer to death because of the sex act, because of sex act, we draw closer to death, and that is why it is tabooed. It is the termination of our spiritual possibilities, and therefore it has to be given up, it has to be set aside. What promotes life promotes perhaps with a greater vehemence death. That is the price we pay for our existence. Each sex act means drawing closer to death. That is the strange irony. Sex enjoyment is but nature's bribe to man for the perpetuation of life. He becomes more of a slave to her, to nature, than he truly enjoying anything, and slavery to nature means death. The other dilemma of the soul taking birth in a body without resort anywhere to sex act being made is of a relatively minor nature. It is not psychospiritual, as in the case of an individual, but universal belonging to the occult, belonging to the working of universal nature. It is not through the instrumentation of sex. Maybe the birth could materialize through some occult mechanism by recourse to some Sankhya process of materialization. It could be some unknown Sankhya by which a birth could take place. In fact, the materialization of the spiritual is not all that uncommon. It can happen in exceptional cases. It may be a difficult process. It may be a painful process, but it does occur as it happened in the case of Narad himself. Narad, the spiritual being, entering into Ashwapati's palace, taking a human body. That is the Sankhya materialization of the spiritual into the physical. He has appeared there. It can happen, but that is not an enduring presence at all. Ultimately, eventually, Narad has to shed off his material body and go back by the reverse Sankhya process and be his spiritual being.